Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing great. So, those who are new to my channel, thank you for joining this session. And I would like to request, please share, and subscribe, so that the information or the experience that I'm trying to share through this channel reaches to a wider audiences, and they get benefited in whatever shape or fashion, right? With that, let's dive into our session today. So, in today's video, what I'm gonna talk or show you is about and I'll give you an example is around the importance of persistence level. I'm not sure how many of you have heard about persistence level in Sterling Integrator business process, but the folks who are into production support, the folks who are in business process development, they all need to understand the concept of persistence level in Sterling Integrator to a certain extent. The reason being, this is something that is very, very beneficial for doing proper troubleshooting, let's say for a production support person, or if you're developing and if you're testing your business processes, and when you're deploying to your production environment, you need to understand what are the different type of persistence levels that we have in Sterling Integrator, and based on which environment that you are testing or developing or supporting your business processes, you need to make sure your business processes that you have written are having the right persistence level. The reason being that persistence level is very important to ensure not only in respect to how much information that you are writing to the database for each and every business process steps, but also if you don't have a proper persistence level, sometimes you end up having very limited amount of information, because not all the information is persistent. Because if you're having a very minimal persistence level setup, and then that may end up uh, trouble for you. The reason being, you would not be able to do proper troubleshooting because you don't have access to that kind of logging, right? And that is the reason the I chose this topic in our session today. So, if I have to give you a definition of persistence level is the level of detail that is written to the backend database uh, as the business process runs. So Sterling Integrator can actually persist either all the data or all the step related data, or only a very small amount of data for each activity within the business process, because a business process is a sequence or a combination of multiple services and adapters, which are basically some kind of tasks or activity, right? Now, the default, whenever you are writing a business process, the default value for the Sterling B2B integrator business processes is full persistence, which means that your business processes are actually persisting all the step related information. And when you're designing your business process, definitely one thing which is very critical is to review your persistence requirements and set the persistence level appropriately to reduce the chances of your database filling up and slowing both your processing as well as your system, because the more amount of data you are storing, one is your database storage would quickly start filling up. The second is your processing speed also reduces, because it has to now process each and every step, right? So you may have some business process for which you might have to persist all the steps and data, and you might have another selective business processes for which you do not need to persist either all the steps or maybe few steps. Now, there are three levels at which you can set persistence. You can do it at the global level, which means that it would become the system default. And that, for that, you need to change the persistence level property value in the properties folder. Like under your installation there is a properties folder. Within that there is a file called noapp.properties underscore gis underscore ext.in file. You need to change it over there. But it is always recommended not to change the persistence level at the default in level in the properties file. Rather, you change the persistence level during the check-in process, either at the business process level, right? Or you do it at the service or adapter level, right? Or activity level. So that's the recommended way of overriding the default persistence level, which is the full persistence, right? Now, having said that, let's give a quick example of what does persistence level means, right? And how do you actually set it up at the business process level? So let me quickly share my screen. So let me log in to my Sterling integrator. And once we log in, if you go to manager under business process and click go and list all the business processes that you have, right? And then if you click any of the business process to understand which in persistence level it has, if you see at the very top, like in the bottom section, you have the code, the BPML code, but on the top you have some metadata of that specific business process. Now within that, for our today's session, I'm focusing on this information, which is the persistence level system default. Now system default, as I mentioned, unless and until there was any changes done to that specific noapp property gisext.in file, typically the default persistence level is full persistence. Okay. Now, what does that mean? I'm going to show you quickly. Like, let's say I go to the source manager of this specific business process, and then if I click on edit, and let's say I select V2, and let's go to next page. This is where you see by default it has been selected as system default, which I mentioned. If there is no changes to the property files, typically that's full persistence, which means when this business process runs, within the business process, how many tasks you have or it's going to execute, it will store all the metadata and the relevant information of each and every step into the database. If you see, there are quite a few options which you can toggle. And when you're actually deploying this business process, let's say, like the best case, like the ground rule that we recommend as a business process designer is, when you are developing or testing some business processes in lower environment, right? Like for example, you are developing in a dev environment, testing in a stage environment. In those kind of environments which is non-production, you can it's okay to use full persistence, because you are doing some testing, you are making sure all the steps are executing properly. If there's any error in a specific step, you need to know what is the reason, and then you debug that and you fix it and you rerun it. So it's recommended. But when you are trying to, everything after testing is completed, everything is approved, you are deploying the code, the business process, or there might be a bunch of business processes and maps and other configurations. During deployment time, the thumb rule is, in production, you need to have minimal business process persistence level for the business process, because you don't want to persist all your steps unless it is really required. And what I mean to say is, typically that whenever we deploy in production, by default we try to put it as, if you see out of this, all the uh, different types of persistence level, we select error only, which means that if there is any error, that specific step is actually persisted, so that a production support person can go and look into the details at that step where it errored out, because you are actually persisting that information, and then be able to troubleshoot. Sometimes what happens is that if you do a zero persistent, right, or BP start stop persistent, this kind of settings in your business process in production, and let's say that business process fails, you will have zero information as a production support person to be able to debug. And then now you have to replicate that business process failure scenario again, with the caveat of editing this same business process, putting it into a full persistence, and then rerunning that same, assuming that this time also it will fail for the same reason. And then you now have all the steps persisted, and then you should be able to track that business process step by step to be able to dive deep into that error details and be able to then troubleshoot and fix it. And it's going to take more time, as you understand, right? It has some manual work behind the scenes. So hence, definitely you need to have that conversation, have that um, like identifying which business processes that you anticipate would have a potential of failing for some bad data or some maps failure, right? Those kind of, and then finalizing the right persistence level before even deploying into production. So you might have a spreadsheet, put all the business process that is part of that package, and then I like mention the persistence level for each of the business process based on the priority, based on the type of business process it is, right? What kind of processing it is doing, and what kind of error that you anticipate, and do you think that zero only or error only would be able to suffice, or you need to have a little bit more higher level of persistence to be able to then help like troubleshoot the BP failure, if any, right? And now when I am talking about persistence level, right, I wanted to share this document. If you see tuning or changing persistence level, right, this is the document I was referring to. And if you see, I was talking about the business process level, and then if you want to look into more detail of like what is BP start stop, system default, or step status, BP start stop only zero, right? So all different kind of procedure, it has some information around that, what each and every specific options talks about, and then you define, okay, what is the right step, right? So now if you see, for example, uh, I can cancel this out, and let's go to monitor, and let's search for any current processes. Right now, let's see this test BP, right? If I click on this, you will see, seeing this execution, I can clearly state that steps 1 of 5 is, all there are 5 steps, and all the 5 steps, if you can see, are having information, and you can see all the 5 steps one after another, which, even if I don't open this business process and see the metadata to tell, or I like identify which persistence level it is, I can clearly tell it is full persistence, because you can see all the steps, all the 5 steps persisted. Okay. Now, if I go back and let's say I take this same document, not sure if I have saved it in my desktop, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this just for showing you what I'm referring to. So I'm gonna, okay, I guess I have this data as well. So what I'm gonna, and this is the sample.xml file, and this is a test BP. right? So input data and test BP. Now, if I click on this test BP, you see persistence level is full, the default one, system default. What I'm going to do is test BP. Go to source manager, click on the latest uh, business process version, and let's name reduce persistence level to 0, and then click next. And right now it's full, so I'm gonna, looks like over here the system default is actually 0. That's why the system default, if you see, there is no option of like changing it to 0, because 0 is already identified as system default. So let me do one thing, go back, and let's say I put error only for our understanding. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select error only, and then click next, next, and then I'm going to select the recent version, and then just finish it off. Once it is done, we're going to run this updated business process with updated persistence level and see what are the steps that is persisting. So if I click on execute and click on browse and take this sample one and run it. Now 12015, that's the BP ID. So if I go here, and maybe I can even current processes, right? So let's see. Okay, I'm gonna go here. 12015 process ID. Just to, okay. So it didn't even, okay. Interesting. So as I selected error only, uh, if you see over here, it did not even persisted any step over here for you to look into the information about the business process, because it didn't error out, right? Okay. So let's see. Let's do one more quick thing before I, let's see, test PP. Just to validate, click on go. Where are 8 business processes? Let's see if I can. No, your last is, yeah, the older one. So it didn't even persisted any step because I mentioned error only and there was no error. So none of the step. Okay. Now that's, so now think if this, okay, this is I'm gonna give you one more example. Let's do this. So I go to this test BP and then I click on edit and uh, change persistence to star star. That means the first and the last step. So BP star stop, no errors. So I'll select this one, and then there's, okay, return, execution, execute, and let's give the same sample file. So now I can see the first step and the last step, right? 12019. If I go to current process, I should be able to see this 12019, And if I open it, I will be able to see the first step and the last step only. And if you see over here, it's written full tracking support is unavailable since persistent level is not set to full. So that way you are not quickly filling your database. The process is running faster than if you're like think of process, okay, which has like multiple steps, right? And every step it has to persist. Okay, it's gonna take some time. So there would be some latency. The process would take a little longer than the business process which has less persistence. So there are some trade-offs, right, of having full persistence versus lower level of persistence. So definitely this is something that you should look into. With that, what I'm going to do is in this video, I'm going to also give the link to this document that I was referring to, tuning or changing persistence level. And feel free to ask me any questions if you have after going through this video. And I'm going to stop sharing my video. And I hope that was helpful to all of you. With that, I'm going to conclude today's session and I'll talk to you next week. Thank you.